all equipment your players are wearing fits properly and is in working order. Never modify equipment or remove it. If shin guards, elbow pads, face guards, or similar items are optional, encourage your kids to wear the equipment. Parents of all participants must be required to complete and sign a registration form. You should always have a completed copy of that form with you for each child when practicing and playing. At the minimum, the form should contain emergency contact numbers and a statement signed by the parent giving the child permission to play, recognizing that injuries sometimes occur when playing sports, and permitting you to obtain emergency medical treatment if the child is injured. Remember, it is critically important that you have a completed copy of this form with you in order for you to reach a parent in an emergency and to ensure that emergency rooms will treat the child when you take her for treatment. Injuries most commonly occur when you are not adequately supervising your team. Remember, you are responsible for their safety from the time they arrive until their parents pick them up. Be especially careful before the start of practice when kids are likely to horse around while you are busy talking to parents or planning practice. Always have a first aid kit with you at practice and games, and have an emergency game plan just in case a serious injury does occur. Do you have a phone available? Do you know all the parents' numbers? Where is the nearest hospital? In a few minutes, we will discuss your first aid responsibilities in more detail. Have a legal and safety game plan. Share it with your assistants and follow it. Teach fundamentals appropriate for the age of your athletes. Never teach dangerous techniques. Kids mature at different rates. A 10-year-old can have the physical and mental maturity of an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old. Never allow large, well-developed athletes compete against small, late-developing children. Parents trust their children to you. You and you alone are responsible for their safety. It's a matter of fact that no matter how much care we take, kids sometimes get hurt playing sports. But there are a number of preventative steps you can take to reduce the odds that one of your players will be injured. Earlier, we discussed some of the safety measures that you need to take. Now we want to talk about conditioning the young athlete. Obviously, the better physical condition a child is in, the less likely he or she will be injured. One of the first things you must do at the beginning of every practice and game is to warm up your athletes. Warming up means preparing the body for the physical activity that is about to occur. In other words, getting the juices flowing. You can do this with a jog around the field or simply running in place. Once your players are loose, you need to work on flexibility. Here is Mike Brungart, the strength and conditioning trainer for the San Antonio Spurs, who will lead you through a series of strength and flexibility exercises that you can use on your team.
For years, we thought that the proper way to prepare an athlete for practice or competition was stretching. However, over the past several years, research has indicated that the best way to prepare the athlete for competition or for practice is by a proper warm-up and dynamic movements that take the athlete through a range of motions which actually stretch the athlete as he's warming up. This incorporates the benefits of specific stretching, which is specific to the sport that the athlete is doing, and also it incorporates the important ingredient of warm-up. The dynamic movements I'm about to show you can be used in any sport that an athlete would participate in. They're all designed to improve our flexibility or to prepare us in our flexibility and our warm-up for the movements that will follow when we actually participate in the practice or the competition. The first of those movements that we will incorporate, and many of these have funny names to them simply because they're describing what's actually taking place with the body. The first one, which will stretch the quads as you warm up, are called butt kicks. The second dynamic movement we will do, which will stretch into the gluteal area or the rear end, are called skips, high skips. The third dynamic movement we will incorporate will be called karaoke, which will actually warm up the hips and the outer legs. The fourth dynamic movement that we will incorporate will be straight leg kicks, which will actually incorporate warm-up and stretching into the hamstrings. The fifth movement which we will incorporate are called backward reaches. they will actually work into the hip flexors or the psoas. The sixth dynamic movement we will incorporate are called crossover runs. They warm up the legs and also stretch through proprioceptive types of movements for the lower body. And the seventh dynamic movement that we will incorporate today are called speed skating. Once again, they stretch into the groin area to a degree, but the big thing is they work the adductors and abductors through a warm-up range. Stretching is also very important. The best time to stretch is after practice or after the competition. At that point in time, the muscles are very pliable because they are very warm. In addition, when you stretch after practice or after competition, you help to move lactic acid out of the system. That will help prevent soreness the next day. These are primary stretches that I would incorporate into your stretching program. The first involves the shoulders, the lats, and the chest. When incorporating a stretch, always hold it for 30 seconds. That is an adequate amount of time for a static stretch. The next stretch gets primarily into the groin. This is a stretch that is often done incorrectly. The reason being that many people, when they stretch the groin from a standing position, want to throw the knee out over the toe. This puts all of the stress right through the knee. In reality, what we want is a vertical shin. This allows all of the stress to biomechanically be displaced down through the gastric and the soleus. We move the other leg back to incorporate the stretch. This stretch is for the hamstrings. Place your hands above the knee, locking the knee in. You can reach up and elevate your shoulders as you're doing this, grabbing with both hands and pulling the leg back toward your right ear on your right leg and your left ear on your left leg. This stretch is for the quads. Simply pull the leg and the heel back toward the rear end and kick the other leg forward. This stretch stretches the hips and the lower back. Take your left arm, put it over your right leg, and pull the leg over. Look away from the leg and lay your other hand down.
Once players have been warmed up and stretched, they're ready for full practice. It's during the teaching of fundamental skills and drills that your players should be conditioned. While conditioning should be more intense prior to the start of the season, conditioning drills must be included in every practice to maintain fitness. Here's San Antonio Spurs head coach and general manager, Greg Popovich.
Conditioning is an aspect of sport that's very important for these youngsters. It's very different from the stretching and the dynamic stretching that you've seen. When we speak about conditioning, we're usually talking more about the aerobic part of an exercise. These kids are obviously young people. They're in pretty good shape, but they need to learn the discipline and the lessons involved in getting into better shape for whatever sport they may play. We're going to show you some drills that will help condition these young people so that they will be able to participate at the highest level in these various sports. This conditioning should not be a punishment, and it should take place throughout the practice, both in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. And if it's done wisely in that respect, players oftentimes don't even know that they're being conditioned. But the worst thing to do is to just slough through a practice and at the very end for 5 minutes have everybody run until their tongues are hanging out. They won't be conditioned, they won't have fun, we will have done the youngsters a disservice.
Coaches need to develop conditioning programs appropriate for the sport they are coaching. If the sport requires a lot of continuous running or other strenuous activity, they need to be conditioned aerobically. Aerobic activity is activity that exercises the cardiovascular system and is identified with heavy breathing, sweating, and rapid heartbeat. Anaerobics activity is short bursts of activity and strength conditioning. Baseball and football are primary anaerobic sports, while soccer and basketball are mostly aerobic. Kids need to loosen up or get the juice flowing before they begin strenuous exercise. Dynamic movements take the athlete through a range of motions that stretch them as they're warming up. Conditioning is an essential part of any